Welcome. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar on Coaching Matters. We'll do our best to make this time well spent. We know there's a large number of people in attendance. Let me begin by just saying that as I've gone through life, I've become more and more of a pragmatist. I guess it was the author Cervantes who back in the year 1615 wrote the classic book Don Quixote when he quoted, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And certainly as I've gone through life, I've increasingly come to believe that. Had an experience recently where I went to a county fair and saw a lady doing a demonstration on a wonderful little cheese slicer that stick in a piece of cheese, twist the handle at the top, out comes these nice little slivers of cheese to put on your salads and things. I was really impressed, and so I bought a couple of them. Took them home to my wife very excitedly and discovered that it only worked on a certain kind of cheese at a certain temperature, that it didn't work anywhere near as well as the old-fashioned graters that we have around our kitchens. And I said to myself, that's a good example of making sure that things do what they purport to do and that they really, truly work. So we're here today to talk about coaching and what we can do to provide a process to improve how people coach in a way that truly works. I have increasingly also come to believe that this field of overall leadership development is not necessarily theory deficient. It's just we're implementation, utilization deficient. How do you get people to apply things that we've known about for a long time? Reminds me of one of my favorite stories about an old county agent who goes to visit the farmers in his area, trying to encourage them to attend some classes on farming techniques. He's out talking to one old farmer and telling him all the things that he's going to learn, and the farmer is very polite and sort of nods his head. And so the county agent says, well, will we see you tonight at the meetings? And the farmer says, no. Oh, how come? And the old farmer says, well, I'm not half as good a farmer as I know how to be. And therein kind of lies the challenge, that lots of us aren't as good of coaches or managers that we essentially have the theory about and know how to be. So coaching is an extremely valuable skill for every leader to possess. There's obviously been a huge surge of interest in the last few years, and it's coming up a major component of virtually every leadership development offering. So the question is, can we create programs that truly achieve what we promise that they will? Will they make the changes that we believe can really serve the organization well? And so let me just kind of summarize that the three topics that I'll be covering today is, why is coaching so important? What are the behaviors that we can bring about changing? What are the business outcomes that will result if we do change those behaviors? And finally, how can organizations achieve that whole outcome in a more sure-footed and economical and sustainable kind of way? One of the challenges that we face when we begin to teach people coaching is that many people begin with the belief that they're already pretty good at it. I'm reminded of kind of the comment that Will Rogers made about common sense. Common sense ain't all that common. That when you ask people if they possess common sense, the studies have shown that about 3/4 of the population believe that they are well above average when it comes to common sense. About half the population believes that they have a lot more common sense than the people that they interact with on a daily basis. And that same phenomenon seems to be a little bit true with coaching. Most managers kind of think that they're kind of good at it. Despite that hurdle, our message is that coaching can be successfully taught. And indeed, my experience has been that of all the things I've seen us teach in various leadership development offerings, the results from coaching programs are the most predictable and the most consistent and remarkably consistent from person to person. Let me just briefly summarize with you what those 6 outcomes are. The first one is that invariably people kind of conclude a process of learning about coaching skills, and they say to themselves, I talk way too much of the time. I take more of the airtime than I should in conversations with my subordinates and with my colleagues. The second big takeaway is that I need to become a better listener. As I reviewed some 1,500 development plans of people who went through some of our leadership development offerings, looked at what they had chosen to work on to get better at, listening was the most frequent choice. People discover that they're not as good as they thought they had been. The third takeaway is that people need to ask more and better questions. And what they learn in a coaching workshop is that they don't always ask thoughtful questions designed to elicit important information. The fourth thing they take away is that they're far too prone to jump in and give people advice rather than drawing out the solutions from within the person being coached. The fifth thing that I think they invariably kind of come away with is the great value of having some kind of a process or a template to follow, that roadmaps are really valuable, that indeed having a structure for the coaching conversation, rather than being confining, is ultimately very liberating. And finally, what they learn is that if I'll just take the time to really prepare for a coaching conversation, if I'll take the time to kind of think it through, mentally rehearse it, and then do some things to follow through, that will make all the difference. Those are the 6 most frequent, very consistent takeaways. So if those are things that are valuable to you and the leaders in your organization, then I would encourage you to kind of think seriously about implementing a corporate-wide coaching process. Years ago, as a young graduate student at UCLA, I worked with a couple of professors, Robert Tannenbaum and Warren Schmidt. They had published an article in the Harvard Business Review, which became one of the most frequently requested, reprinted articles of all time. It was called How to Choose a Leadership Pattern. They talked about the fact that leadership could be placed on a continuum, with one end being the laissez-faire, kind of laid-back, more benign kind of leadership, ranging all the way to the highly autocratic, directive, dictatorial kind of behavior that we see in some leaders. We've known for a long time that the best place to be on this continuum was somewhere in the middle for most circumstances and with most subordinates. And what I love about coaching is that it puts into operation those behaviors which kind of draw us to the middle. They encourage us to step into issues and not be laissez-faire. They encourage us to draw solutions from within the individual rather than being directive and dictatorial, and gets us away from being autocratic. What I'd like to do is to just ask you a question about what's happening in your company now. So on your screen you will now see a poll. The poll has 5 options indicating how coaching currently happens in your company. Would you read through those 5 choices and choose the one that sort of best indicates or best describes what's going on in your company at the time being? And thank you for kind of being quick and jumping onto it. Looks like the most frequent answer is number 4, that managers are doing all the coaching that gets done. followed by number 2, which is some organizations are apparently using external coaches for those special cases. Looks like the least frequent response is number 5, that you practice in some official way a peer coaching process. All right, that's helpful information. I want to now talk a little bit about, so what are the business outcomes? If we're able to teach people how to be more effective coaches, what is the result? And there are, from our perspective, 5 important business outcomes. Number 1, it appears to impact productivity. It impacts employee engagement, employee retention, people's perceptions of how well they're being developed, and finally, it alters the way the manager is perceived. Let me just quickly review those 5 with you. We now have over 500,000 360-degree feedback instruments in our database pertaining to about 50,000 leaders. One of our data sets involves a large oil company where we looked at the question of coaching effectiveness versus the willingness of direct reports to sort of go the extra mile and describe themselves as kind of going the extra mile. What you see here is that if you plot coaching effectiveness on the horizontal axis, decile by decile, and as you see, as you move up to the right, the most effective leaders have 3 times as many people who describe themselves as being willing to go the extra mile as those who are in the bottom decile, or 10%. It clearly seems to affect employee engagement. And there's been a great deal of talk about employee commitment, employee engagement of late. Again, if you plot coaching effectiveness on the horizontal axis and plot it against levels of employee commitment, what you see is that you go from the 14th percentile, roughly, to the 88th percentile based on the effectiveness of the coach. That if we want more engaged and more committed employees, nothing else that we measure is so highly correlated with employee engagement levels. The third thing has to do with people's decision or willingness to stay with the organization. I know that turnover has not been a huge issue in the last few years, but I think we all believe it's going to become more important as time goes on. What you see here is if, again, you plot coaching effectiveness on the horizontal axis against people's statement of, do you think about going to work for some other organization, you see that it reduces it in half. The more effective the coach, the less likely people are thinking about quitting. The last 2 slides describe and show the correlation between to what degree do I feel like I receive the coaching and feedback about my performance that I would like against how am I feeling about my opportunities to grow and develop on the job. And you see this very steady kind of correlation or progression on those 2 dimensions. And finally, if we think about the desire that we all have as leaders to be perceived in a positive light, if we correlate how people perceive you overall as a manager and a supervisor, and you plot that against the degree to which you provide the coaching and feedback that the employees so desperately want, you see this very direct correlation between those 2 things. Why is that true? Why does coaching work so well? I think you could come up with many answers probably, but it's very personalized. It has built-in sustainability in the very process itself, and it tends to kind of get riveted on the really important issues that the individual faces. To be certain that we're all talking about the same thing, let me just give you the definition of coaching that we have for the program called the Extraordinary Coach that we offer. Our definition of coaching is that it's interactions that help the individual who's being coached two. First, expand their awareness so that they get a clearer view of what their current situation is. They see it through a new lens. They see it more crisply. To discover superior solutions. So notice that it isn't to get advice, to be told what to do, but it is to, from within them, discover better solutions to the problems that they face, and then to make and implement better decisions. And we think it's really important that it's not advice giving, it's about expanding awareness, coming to better solutions, and then both making and implementing those better decisions. So coaching isn't done when you've just had the conversation, but it's really what happens in the aftermath. Obviously, coaching then can be applied to both performance issues and to discussions about people's ongoing careers. I'd like you now, if you would, to participate in one more quick little poll, trying to find out what gets in the way of coaching. In addition to what we've already talked about, let me ask you, if you would, look at the 5 questions that are on your screen. In your organization, what's the biggest barrier to preventing a coaching culture where leaders really are growing others? If you would, kind of look at those 5, choose the one that you think is most descriptive of your organization. What gets in the way? And again, thank you for jumping on to this quickly. Looks like the answers are coming in that most people see that or believe other priorities are taking precedence. Number 4, that the expense in implementing training is standing in the way, and that maybe there's no champion. At number 3, there's no champion to really drive it. And then finally, number 1 is it's kind of nice to do, but not perceived as necessary. So the scalability issue is it's just hard to reach the majority of leaders. Comes in last. So let me review with you now what we believe organizations can do to create a coaching culture. There are 6 elements. I'm going to put the 6 elements up on the screen very quickly, but we'll be covering each one of them, so no need to take any quick notes. It begins with the organization needs to set the expectation that leaders will provide coaching to their colleagues. We think one way of doing that is to help managers see the connection between bottom line results and organizational effectiveness. So many leaders are persuaded when they see the strong correlation between their subordinates receiving coaching from them and their productivity, their engagement, their ability to provide good customer service, their feelings about staying with the organization. That may be a way to help get started. We think that having senior leaders both serve as kind of sponsors and to model coaching behavior is certainly a second way that you create that expectation. As with anything else, making this practice visible, making it an agenda item on staff meetings and a topic of leadership meetings. I'm always struck when I go to visit companies in the oil patch area of our country, and their very strong, dedicated focus on safety. And every meeting begins with a kind of a safety review. What's in the event of a disaster, how do you get out of here? A review of kind of safety regulations. Some of them have a little tutorial that you have to go through in the lobby of the company, and it's just they obviously do a whole bunch of things to make safety important, and those are the kinds of things we can do when it comes to setting the expectation about coaching. I think the second thing has to do with structure and process. So, as with many disciplines, we believe that with structure, consistency improves, efficiency improves, quality improves, and similarly, without structure, those things don't improve, don't get better. I'm reminded of the experience in the medical world that has been reported on kind of lately about what structure does to various medical procedures. So there's a fun little book by a man named Atul Gawande, and it's called the Checklist Manifesto. And in this book, Gawande makes a very strong case for the use of checklists in performing certain medical procedures. The one he was particularly focused on was what they have referred to as inserting central line catheters. These are catheters that are put into a patient's chest that would usually be connected into a major aorta to provide either medications or nutrition to the individual. And Gawande noticed that about 11% of these were becoming infected, and yet he didn't think there was any reason for that to happen. So 1 out of every 9 of these insertions became infected, resulting in a prolonged interest and an enormous cost to the hospital in additional stays and potential lawsuits. And so he observed that there were 5 things that surgeons needed to do when they were performing this procedure. And let me review quickly what they were. Wash your hands with soap. Clean the patient's skin with chlorhexidine antiseptic. Cover the patient's body with a sterile gown or drape. Wear a mask and a hat and a sterile gown and gloves. And then once the insertion is made in the patient's chest, then put a sterile dressing over the insertion once the catheter's in. Now, I don't know about you, but I kind of look at that list of 5 things and say, gosh, I thought that would have been just standard operating procedure everywhere. What Gawande pointed out was it wasn't. 2 years after they introduced this checklist, they found that infections had dropped to 0. They estimate that there were 43 infections and probably 8 deaths that were saved because of this adoption of this procedure. And I tell you this only because I think in every discipline, whether it's flying an airplane or performing surgical procedures, there's real value in having a process to follow. So what we have done is to create a process. We've used the acronym FUEL to just describe that the ideal process for a coach to follow is to kind of frame the conversation, set the stage, then spend some time understanding the current state that the individual faces, to explore the desired outcomes and what ideally would be accomplished, and finally to lay out a success plan for the future with milestones. That general framework provides a very comfortable track for the coach to follow. We have created a conversation guide with some suggested questions that enables the coach to follow this process. In the course of creating this program called The Extraordinary Coach, we also took the time to look at the research from other disciplines. Ours is certainly not the only discipline that has conversations with people with the intent of improving their life and their behavior. So the world of psychiatry, social work, counseling, psychotherapy, clinical psychology, all those things, all those disciplines use a general procedure of a motivational conversation designed to help people perform at a higher level. We did our best to review all that research and to extract from that what we thought were some really good ideas and incorporate them in our program. We found some very interesting research from those who are studying the brain. We saw research from a man named Prochaska on the change process. We saw some fascinating research from the world of psychotherapy and clinical psychology. And so we just want to assure you that we were not limited to what's going on kind of in traditional business coaching. We think we were able to provide the coach with some practical tools that he or she can use that will help focus the conversation on topics of really most import and interest. We were able to kind of create a little feedback instrument to be used at the end of formal coaching sessions that can be very valuable to the coach in learning what has taken place that is of most value. We provide coaches with a little checklist that they can give people to think about what topics they may want to talk about. We give them a little instrument that they can use to get feedback at the conclusion of coaching. We believe that by having this more structured process, we can really improve quality. Number 3, then, is to provide managers within the organization with skill training, and particularly to help them acquire those skills and then understand what they need to do to bring about sustainability. Which now brings me to one more time, would like to ask you to just give us some information. On the screen, we've posted a little poll that just asks you to assess how would you kind of evaluate the coaching that's currently going on in your organization. And we've given you, again, 5 choices. First is it's incomplete. People just don't do it. A D or F, it's being done not very well, maybe so badly that it does more harm than good. A C, it's helpful. We have average coaching. Then a B, and finally an A, that you have extraordinary coaching occurring within your organization. So we would invite you, if you would, to give yourselves a grade. And let's just see here. Again, thanks for jumping on it so quickly. Looks like the most frequent response is a C, that we're average, we're helpful, but not very many A's. And I guess that the C is followed by the incomplete score, that there's a lot of you that say it's not being done. Let me again just revisit this phenomenon that there are some unique challenges in teaching coaching. Not only do people kind of begin by thinking that they're moderately good at it, but it does require some unlearning. And by unlearning, I mean that we not only lack a clear conception, but we actually have some wrong conceptions about coaching. And I think this is largely the result of our association with the word coaching with the world of athletics. So for those of us who participated in junior high school or high school athletic programs, we have a stereotype about what a coach does. And there probably isn't any function or activity or role that is more autocratic, more directive, more dictatorial than the way some junior high school or high school coaches behave. They set the strategy, they substitute players, they call every decision on the field. True, they're not out there handling the ball, they're not an active participant, but they're very, 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 very directive. And so I think we have to, in a way, unlearn that belief. And so often when you talk about coaching with individuals, at first blush, they associate coaching with being advice givers, and that a coach must possess superior wisdom and experience in order for him or her to be a good coach. What I can tell you is that organizations who have elected to really implement corporate-wide coaching programs, and I can just mention two or three that we think have done a particularly remarkable job. Safeway has, in a very broad-scale way, brought coaching to a large group of their managers, and they find that it's extremely well received. One of the highest satisfaction scores from the participants, and people believing that they really are acquiring a usable practical skill. General Mills has done a variety of programs with their leaders to teach them how to be more effective coaches, and they are experiencing very positive results from it. In the financial services industry, the Fidelity organization has used a variety of training techniques and methods and various variants of our Extraordinary Coach program to improve the coaching within their organization. What we've learned so far then, and just again in summary, is that people often start with pretty high self ratings. We know that leaders love to jump in and solve problems, and yet at the same time employees want more coaching. They even tell us that they want more corrective feedback. They want to know what they're doing well, but they also want to know what they're not doing well, as seen through the eyes of the manager. And that long-term development is a distant priority for lots of leaders. And yet it makes such a huge difference in terms of employee commitment and their desire to stay with the organization on a long-term basis. I'd like to ask you to participate in one final poll here, and that is, what is your organization currently doing in terms of providing development in coaching skills for the line managers? We've given you 5 choices, ranging from not having done any training on this topic to awareness training, to providing it to new managers, to training a very select population, and finally every leader in the organization is being given some kind of development. What it looks like, as you who are early responders, looks like a number of you are not doing anything right now. Looks like there's several that are doing a little bit of awareness. These are almost in the order that they're listed, that some organizations give this to new managers or select populations, but not very many of you are giving this kind of development to every leader in the organization. Thank you very much for doing that. Well, the fourth recommendation in terms of creating a culture for coaching would be to organize systemically. And by this, I'm simply suggesting that if you start at the senior level, get their buy-in, help them develop the skills so that they can be role models, they can set the expectation within the organization that this is important. We think maybe that cluster is the first consideration. Secondly, then, to reach that broad base of leaders in the organization for whom having these skills are important, that they can work to create sustainability, that they can maybe serve as the broker between people who want coaching and those people who have received coaching training, and that they can then provide some measures of progress. We think it's important that the employee group be given the signal that if they want more coaching, that they simply need to ask, and that they need to feel some ownership in having the desired coaching, both on their performance as well as on their career possibilities within the organization. But organizing this systemically, we believe, is a valuable process. Which leads me to number 5. The fifth topic has to do with how do you increase the pull? How do we get employees to sort of ask for this? We know from a good deal of research that coaching increases when the employee requests it. And if you remind employees that this is a two-way street and that they simply need to raise their hand, ask their manager to set aside some time for coaching discussions, if a senior executive in the organization can send that clear message to everyone that coaching is something that we believe in and we want to make available, and if you will simply express your desire for this, we will do our best as an organization to accommodate that. And then finally, I guess the final process is that we need to monitor and measure how much coaching is going on and to create that kind of accountability. And I believe that there are things we can do to actually kind of let people know what's happening, and managers can talk about it, and we can, in our employee surveys, make this an item where we ask if people are receiving the coaching that they desire. That this can be informal and anecdotal, or it can be done through more official kind of surveys where people are kind of asked to evaluate how the organization is doing. And we can build it into the performance appraisal process if we so choose. So with that, let me just kind of summarize. We've said that coaching matters because it puts good leadership behavior into practice. It works. It has very predictable and consistent outcomes. It does produce, from every indication, positive, measurable business results. And finally, we've talked about 6 things that you can do inside your organization to create a culture and climate that emphasizes coaching. With that, let me just conclude by inviting you all to participate with us in a coaching symposium, Orlando, Florida, March 12th and 13th. It's going to be a 2-day intensive learning experience conducted by myself and Kathleen Stinnett, who is the co-author of the book, The Extraordinary Coach, and herself a master certified coach. And if you'd like some more information about that, please contact us at the numbers that you see on the screen, or go to our website, www.zengerfolkman.com/events. So again, thanks for joining us, and we hope that you have received some useful information about creating a coaching culture and how to make coaching really matter.